They stole his name, his company, his freedom. At 2 in the morning, the system screamed with a forged log that carried his signature, proof of a crime he didn't commit. Daniel Cole, once a visionary founder, suddenly became the villain in the story of his own life. But lies have edges, and when the right people are watching, the truth has a way of cutting back. This is a story of betrayal, of secrets buried in mirrors and trusts, and of a brother who wrote himself into the history of a company by forging the future in his own name. It's the story of Daniel's fight for vindication, against enemies in boardrooms, against ghosts in the code, and against the one man he never thought he'd have to fight, his brother. He lay still and listened to the radiator tick, to the sleep-heavy creaks of the building, to the faint siren wail threading the 2 a.m. air. Somewhere, a delivery truck coughed awake. Somewhere, a couple argued through thin walls. In the apartment next door, his neighbor's dog rolled and thumped the floor with a sigh. He should have been sleeping. In 8 hours, the board of Vesper Dynamics would convene, and Daniel, co-founder, chief engineer, head of the stubborn little team that had invented a way to make graphite sing like gold, would sell their vision to a room filled with suits who'd never soldered a joint in their lives. He had built the deck himself, slid it slide by slide into a story even men with silver hair and silent watches would understand. Not just a product, but a pivot, not a gamble, but a runway. He turned on his side. The city's blue smeared over the framed patents on his wall. He smiled at the memory of their first lab, a one-car garage that smelled of acetone and cheap coffee, laced with solder smoke and optimism. There was Malik, lanky and brilliant, scowling at a whiteboard. Avery, their operations whisperer, coaxing suppliers into extending terms they didn't deserve. And Elliot, Daniel's best friend since freshman year in the dorms, who had taught him how to turn ramen into a meal and stress into a joke. Elliot, who could sell sunlight at midnight. Elliot, who, even now, had insisted on being the one to present the closing. Let me punch home the promise, Dan. You do the guts, I'll do the glitter. They had built a company that hummed. They'd also built enemies, competitors who resented Vesperan's appetite for talent, investors who saw Daniel's refusal to cut safety corners as stubbornness instead of spine. But the numbers were there. The prototype worked. The pre-orders weren't a fantasy. He was, Daniel told himself, ready. He closed his eyes. The knock came like a polite apology. 3 measured taps. Then, after a pause, 2 more. He sat up. The city's hum seemed to pull back, leaving a thin, expectant hush. The wall clock said 2:14. He pulled on a t-shirt and padded to the door. Yeah, he called. Mr. Daniel Cole? The voice was neutral, with the rasp of someone used to repeating themselves. Daniel slid the chain and cracked the door. 2 people stood in the narrow hallway. A woman with a neat bun and a man whose shoulders filled the frame. Both wore dark coats that did not belong to the building. Behind them, the exit sign hummed. Yes, Daniel said, blinking into the light. Can I help you? The woman lifted a leather folder, opened it like a ritual. Detective Marla Shields, NYPD. This is Detective Heron. We have a warrant to search the premises. The words didn't make sense. They hovered a moment, then wobbled and fell. A what? He said, and heard his voice come out thin. Heron's eyes flicked over Daniel's shoulder, into the apartment's dim mouth. We'll explain in a moment, sir. Shields handed him the paper. The heading was black and blunt. His name was there, ridiculous and plain. Under it, paragraphs boiled. He saw the words probable cause. Okay, he said, but he didn't mean okay. His stomach dropped to a place just below the floorboards. Can I make a call? In a moment, Shields said, Mr. Cole, are you alone? Daniel nodded. Any weapons in the home? No, he said. No? No. Heron's gaze lingered in that way cops have, a silence meant to tempt you into filling it with guilt. Daniel just swallowed. May we come in? Shields asked. He stepped back. He stood in the little entryway, the hallway light cutting a bright wedge across his floor. They entered tidy, professional, and then the tidy became a choreography. More footsteps on the stairs, uniforms slipping past them, plastic gloves popped on wrists, thick zippered bags unpacked like a priest laying out sacrament. Mr. Cole, Shields said gently. Do you understand why we're here? No, she paused. Her eyes were a darker brown than her skin made you expect. We have reason to believe that you. The walkie on Heron's shoulder crackled. A voice said something about the back stairs. Heron lifted a palm. We got it, he said, and went to the kitchen, where someone was carefully lifting Daniel's laptop like a sleeping child. That you are in possession of proprietary data that was unlawfully accessed and removed from Valaris Industrial. Shields finished. Daniel blinked. The words hit a wall inside him. Valaris? The competitor Valaris? Shields didn't grin, didn't shrug. The one on 6th Avenue, yes. He laughed, snorted. It sounded like choking. That's insane. I don't even have an access card to Valaris. I've never. One of the uniforms, a young guy who looked like a linebacker in a borrowed suit, called from the bedroom. Detective, you want to see this? Shields walked past him into the bedroom. Daniel stood alone 2 breaths, feeling himself hover 1 inch above reality like a trick. Heron returned and watched him with calm animal interest, like you watch a deer decide if it's going to bolt. Shields came back holding a silver external drive with a red strip of tape across it. Daniel's stomach went cold. This was in your desk, she said. I don't own that, he said. He did own 3 drives, black, scuffed, labeled with masking tape and Sharpie. That silver was not his. I have never seen that. Shields tilted it. We'll take it with us, along with your laptop, your phone, and any additional storage devices. My phone? I need, tomorrow, my board meeting. I understand this is inconvenient, Shields said with real softness. But the warrant? What exactly are you accusing me of? Heron's voice was low and untroubled. Trade secret theft, industrial espionage, computer fraud. The list is long. We'll read it downtown. Downtown. The word was a fist. Daniel felt suddenly, absurdly, aware of his bare feet, the scuff on the baseboard he'd been meaning to paint, the mug in the sink with a ring of tea. Detective, he said, and forced his voice to be slow. I'm the co-founder of a company that is literally sued by Valaris every time we breathe. I am not dumb enough to steal from them. Shields didn't deny it. She didn't agree. She nodded like a therapist. If that's true, the process will show it. The process. Daniel rubbed at his face at the rub of stubble. He heard his neighbor's door crack diagonally, a rectangle of sleepy eye and hair. Please, he said, aware of the way his hands trembled. Let me call my lawyer. Shields nodded. You can call from the precinct. For now, I'm going to ask you to put on shoes. The precinct smelled like old plastic and hot dust. Hours, shaved down by paperwork and question marks, slid somewhere outside time. They took his prints. They took his belt, his shoelaces, and the pen he'd carried since grad school, the one with a nick in the cap where Elliot had gnawed it during late nights and laughter. He called Malik. The call went to voicemail. He tried again, left words that sounded like someone else. He called Avery, straight to voicemail. He called Elliot. Eli picked up on the second ring. Over the line, a party echoed, glasses a beat, the murmur of wealth picking its teeth. Damn, my man, Elliot said, all warmth and charm. Tell me you're awake prepping to dazzle old men. They arrested me, Daniel said. Silence exploded and then injuriously smoothed. The party noise seemed to step into another room. What? I'm at the 12th. They say Valaris data was found in my apartment. Eli, a drive was in my desk that isn't mine. Eli's voice dropped into a seriousness Daniel knew. The tone he used when a venture term sheet had a hidden hook. Listen to me. Don't say anything to anyone. I'm getting a lawyer. I'll be there within. He cut himself off. I'll call you right back. The call ended. Daniel stared at the phone like it had changed languages. He tried Malik again. He tried Avery. By the time the lawyer, thin, aggressive, with a watch that flashed like a threat, arrived, the sky outside had started to bleach from black to a dirty blue. The interview was antic with restraint. Detective Shields asked questions. The lawyer shook his head. Daniel said the words he was allowed, his name, his denial, his request to go home, and swallowed the ones he wasn't. They let him sit. They let him watch the clock. They let him hear, through painted cinder block walls, another man weep angrily in Spanish, a woman's furious whisper, the huff of a copier dying and resurrecting. By 10, they had moved to arraignment. The charges read like an insult song. Daniel stood in a courtroom that smelled of coffee and old gum and listened to a man in a robe say phrases that laid themselves in his bones like ice. He expected, in that wild last-ditch corner where denial lives, that someone would pop from behind the judicial woodwork and say, "Kidding. Hidden cameras. Social experiment." He expected, less wildly, to see Elliot in the back, his careful suit of flag. "I've got you." Instead, he saw three reporters, a man with a bad tie scrolling his phone, a woman in a sensible skirt who might have been a paralegal, and beside a column, a figure he recognized with a lurch. Antonia Vale, Valaris's corporate counsel. Her lipstick was the color of a bruise over an apple. She looked at him and did not smile. They set bail high and did not deny it. He signed things, shook hands that were dry and uninterested, nodded to the judge because it was expected. He watched a clerk stamp his name in a way that made it into a thing that could be filed and forgotten. Then the city let him out like a fish you're not done playing with. Outside, cameras bobbed. A reporter asked if he had anything to say. He did. He wanted to say, "I did not do this." He wanted to say, "I'm tired." He wanted to say, "This is ridiculous." He wanted the right sentence that would undo the wrong. His lawyer hustled him into a waiting car with tinted windows that smelled like vinyl and lemon. "Say nothing," the lawyer said, staring out the window at the courthouse steps. "Not to press, not to friends, not online. Say less than nothing." Daniel nodded because he knew control when he saw it, and control was a temporary raft on a fast river. "My board meeting," he said. The lawyer made a face like someone had mentioned opera to a plumber. "You're not going. They'll fire me." "They might," the lawyer said. "But that's a civil matter. This is the one that puts you in a room with a metal door." Daniel stared at the lawyer's reflection in the windshield until the swarming cameras shrank and the streets widened. When the car dropped him at his apartment, there was police tape in a ludicrous yellow ribbon at the door. The super, a man named Jorge who smiled with his eyes, stood like a guard. "Lo siento," Jorge said, hand spread. "It's fine, Danielite." It wasn't fine. Inside, the apartment had been gentled by strangers. He touched the space where his laptop had sat. He looked at the indent in the carpet where his external drives had pressed. He stared at the dish in the sink and could not remember if he had rinsed it or if some earnest uniform had placed it there so their ritual would seem less violent. His phone, returned to him like a favor, was an animal that would not sit. There were 3 voicemails from unknown numbers. There was a text from a woman he sometimes saw, which said simply, "Call me?" There was a calendar alert at 11. Board meeting, Vesper. He dressed like you dress for a second life. He put on the suit that had been expensive enough to hurt. He knotted the tie Elliot had given him when they got their series, midnight blue, a subtle pattern like rain. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a man who might sell insurance or mercy. He took the subway anyway. On the platform, he stared at the peeling ad for a movie that promised revenge in 78 choreographed minutes. A kid with headphones swayed with sincerity. An older woman held a plastic bag with a loaf of bread, a spray of parsley like a victory flag. The train arrived with the sigh of something that had been moving long before he existed and would move long after. He got off near the glass ribs of Vesper Tower. The lobby guard, who had winked at him on youthful late nights, did not wink. The elevator camera watched. Daniel watched back. On 28, the doors opened onto a hallway that smelled like fresh carpet and ambition. Meredith, the receptionist, looked up, then down, like a school kid who'd been whispered a secret. "I need to see them," Daniel said. Meredith's mouth worked twice before producing words. "They're in the boardroom." He walked past her because he had that muscle memory. His footfalls were too loud. The glass wall of the boardroom let him see it all like a TV show. The suits, the fruit plate, the bottled water labels turned discreetly outward. At the head of the table, in the chair they had always joked was a throne they would take turns warming, sat Elliot. Eli looked good. He always looked good. His suit fit like it had been told a secret by a tailor. He had that gift of seeming both taut and relaxed, a cat in a sunbeam that had spotted a pigeon. He was speaking. Daniel could not hear the words through the glass, but he recognized the hand gestures. He had seen them sell investors on the idea that a company could be an exoskeleton for the future. He had seen them persuade a skeptical CFO to open a door, if not his wallet. The door opened before Daniel knocked. Avery stood there, face tired and careful. She was the kind of woman who made everything more efficient by walking into a room. Her hair was pulled back into a precise knot that said she had not slept. "Dan," she said low. "Let me in," he said. She moved aside. Heads turned like birds. A few did not. Elliot's did. "Daniel," said board chairwoman Quinn, in the voice of a person who could make a company change course with an eyebrow. "This is not. My arrest was a mistake," Daniel said. He did not waste the word alleged. "I didn't steal anything from Valaris. You know me." Quinn's expression did not change. "We know there was a warrant executed. We know an external drive was found in your apartment containing confidential Valaris design schematics for their thermal-resistant composite. We know their counsel has reached out indicating a civil action under the DTSA. I have never," he began, and something in his chest snapped closed. "Where is Malik?" "On a call," Avery said gently. "With the lab." "Of course he is." Daniel looked at Elliot. "Say something." Eli held his gaze with painful care. "Everyone here wants the same thing," he said. "Vesper safe. Our people safe. Our runway intact." "I am our people," Daniel said. He felt the room tilt. "I'm the one who built the—" Quinn cut him with a gesture. "No one is disputing your contributions," she said, and made the word contributions sound like crumbs. "But perception is reality in markets, Daniel. If the story is that one of our founders stole trade secrets, I didn't. Then we must protect the entity." "Counsel." She turned to a lawyer who was new, young, slick, with a haircut that cost enough to feed a small country. Counsel cleared his throat the way lawyers learn to in the second week of law school. "The recommended course is to move swiftly to distance the company from Mr. Cole. Place him on administrative leave pending investigation. Remove his access." He slid a folder across the table like a magician revealing a tame dove. "And if necessary, request his resignation." Daniel stared at the folder, which had his name on the tab, as if it were a category into which papers could be filed and then shredded. He felt every nerve in his hands. He remembered soldering a filament so fine it shocked him to look at it without breathing. He remembered Elliot's laugh on a rooftop at 3 a.m. He remembered the first time someone had called him sir without sarcasm. "Request," he said. The word tasted like a joke. "You're requesting?" Eli's face didn't move, but something in his eyes did. A flicker of regret or calculation or a flame pretending to be a candle. "Dan," Avery said quietly. "Please." He looked at her. He remembered the day she'd joined, how she'd walked through the lab and found the stack of invoices no one had touched and made them make sense. He had trusted her to tell him when he was being stupid. He wanted her to tell him that now. "Someone set me up," he said. Silence. It was not disbelieving silence. It was the silence of a room that has decided not to engage with your premise. He felt the tightening in his chest begin to tremble into anger. "Valaris has sued us 6 times in 2 years," he said. "They lost 4. We settled the other 2 for nickels. They want us dead. They want me dead. You think they planted evidence? Fine, call it conspiracy theory. But a drive I've never seen showed up in my desk. I don't own a silver drive. Ask Jorge. Ask Mr. Cole," Quinn said, and the Mr. was a small cruelty. "No one here is making determinations of guilt. We are making determinations of risk." "Risk," he repeated. "Your access is suspended effective immediately," the slick lawyer said smoothly, as if reading the weather. "Your badge will be deactivated. Your company credentials, email, repositories, lab will be temporarily blocked. We will appoint an interim head of engineering." "Who?" Daniel asked, though he knew the answer before Elliot breathed. "Elliot," Quinn said, and actually turned her head to give him a small nod, like a conductor acknowledging a soloist. "He will oversee stabilization with Avery." It was a small moment in a big room, but it moved the air. Daniel's anger, which had been bright, pulsed darker. "You knew," he said to Elliot. Eli shook his head. "I knew only that something like this might happen and that we needed continuity. If I hadn't stepped up, they'd have brought in a stranger." "We are strangers," Daniel said gently, relishing the precision of the hurt. Apparently, Mr. Cole, the lawyer said, as if savaging a deer is more effective if you say, sir. We'll be sending you an official letter. If you'd like, you may sign your resignation today, and we will consider a severance package. It will be contingent on a non-disparagement clause and an agreement to cooperate. Cooperate with what? Daniel asked, though he understood. Cooperate with making your own execution look like a graceful retirement. With the ongoing investigation, the lawyer said, it occurred to Daniel that if he had been a different version of himself, one less obstinate, one more pragmatic, he might have weighed the money, the time, the chance that in a few months no one would remember his name except in an obscure legal brief. He might have folded. He might have told himself that the honest win is sometimes stepping aside. But he was the version who'd soldered filaments by hand when they couldn't afford a machine and written code on napkins because the whiteboard had been full. He was the version who could recite the impedance of a dozen materials because it made him feel like he knew how the world resisted. He was the version who had been taught by a father who'd had to claw his way through 3 jobs and a union boss to own his weekends at your name is the one thing you guard. He stood taller. He looked at Quinn until she had to meet his eyes to preserve her own narrative. No, he said, I won't sign. Suspend me. Fire me. But I'm not going to confess to a thing I didn't do. Quinn's mouth moved a millimeter that might have been respect or indigestion. Very well. Eli stood up. He put his hands on the table and leaned forward an inch, encouraging the way you lean toward a man standing at the abyss. Dan, let breathe. This looks bad. It might get worse. We will be here when, will you? Daniel asked, because from here, it looks like you're already seated in my chair. Eli's jaw flickered. It made Daniel feel mean and alive. He wanted, pettily, truthfully, to wound. He wanted to leave claw marks on everything they were taking. Security will escort you, the slick lawyer said, and 2 men materialized at the back of the room, one broad, one tired. They wore the uniform of people who had done this before. Polite faces, big keys. Daniel didn't look at them. He looked at Avery. She didn't avoid him this time. Her eyes were raw at the edges, like she'd been rubbing them with unforgiving fingers. Find the truth, she mouthed. He nodded once. It was enough fuel to get him to the elevator. The doors closed with a softness that felt like a shove. On the street, the city had shrugged itself into noon. Food trucks exhaled garlic. Men in shirt sleeves smoked in doorways and cursed at their phones. Daniel walked until the ache in his feet had a rhythm. He walked until the outrage arranged itself into a stack of what next. He called Malik again. This time, Malik answered. His voice a grit. Dan, where the hell have you been? In the lab, Malik said. Counsel had us all in a room going through your commits, your access logs. It was bad theater. What did they find? Nothing that says you're an idiot, Malik said. And then, after a breath, there are weird anomalies. Daniel stopped outside a bakery that bled warm sugar into the sidewalk. Define weird. In the week before the alleged leak, there are logins from your credentials at hours you weren't in the lab. I checked camera footage manually. Your face wasn't there, but your username is all over the access logs like graffiti. So someone used my credentials. Or someone made it look like someone used your credentials, Malik said. Bad actors can spoof logs if they have admin rights or if they compromise the right service. I need more time. They took my laptop, Daniel said, and a drive I've never seen somehow appeared in my desk. I heard, Malik said. His voice went careful, which Daniel both loved and hated him for. Look, man, they locked your access. They're talking about an external audit. I can't do much from inside that doesn't leave fingerprints. How sure are you that you can scrub those anomalies clean? I'm sure I can prove they aren't you, Malik said. But proving who they are? Different question. Is there anything that points at a direction? Malik hesitated. Daniel heard the hum of the lab through the phone, the lilt of voices he knew and loved. 2 directions, Malik said. First, the anomalies correlate with the deployment of a patch Avery push for the inventory system. It shouldn't touch authentication, but the timing is tight. Avery, Daniel said. The thought kinked into him like wire. No, I'm not saying she did anything, Malik rushed. I'm saying an environment change happened. Second direction. The Valaris schematics on the drive? The file metadata says they were modified by a user called Archer. Archer, Daniel repeated. Like a handle? Like a code name? Or a joke? Daniel rubbed at his temple. He remembered a party 2 months back where he'd stood on a balcony with Elliot watching a man perform sleight of hand with cards. The magician had called himself Archer. He'd made coins appear and disappear, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Eli had laughed, delighted. Daniel had sipped a drink and felt uneasy without knowing why. Archer, he said again, tasting the shape of it. Dan, Malik said, voice low. Are you alone? In a crowd, Daniel said, don't text me anything sensitive. Call from payphones or encrypted apps. Assume your phone is naughty. Malik exhaled. You always told me paranoia is just an accurate model with incomplete data. I was being annoying, Daniel said. You were being right, Malik said. Find safe ground. Lie low. I'll keep looking. The line clicked dead in the soft, friendly way of a network not wanting to admit there are limits. Daniel stood, the city pressing against him with its indifference. He thought of standing in that boardroom, of Elliot's hands on the table, of Avery's mouth saying find the truth. He thought of Antonia Vale's lipstick and how it looked like a bruise over fruit. He thought of Archer, the man with the cards, and the way Eli had leaned forward, gathering charm like coins. He turned and saw, across the street, a man watching him. The man wore a gray suit that was the opposite of Eli's. Cheap, too long in the sleeves, shiny at the elbows. He had hair that had surrendered in an unheroic pattern and a face that wouldn't stick in your memory if it tried. He might have been a mid-level accountant or a guidance counselor's cousin. He might have been nobody, except he was watching Daniel with professional unfocus. The way someone looks not at you, but at the space you occupy, like a camera without a soul. Daniel shifted. The man didn't. He pretended to check his watch. Daniel pretended to look at a bus schedule. The man adjusted his glasses. Daniel stepped into the street without quite deciding to. The man didn't follow. He stepped instead into the flow of pedestrians and bled out of sight like something poured into a drain. Daniel stood there and laughed once, a sound without humor. If someone was following him, then he wasn't crazy. If no one was following him, then he was seeing ghosts because that's what the wronged see. He started toward the river. He needed water, a horizon sky. He needed to look at a line and pretend it was a path. By the time he reached the pier, the day had stretched itself into late afternoon. The Hudson's shoulder barges. A jogger stopped to tie a shoe and never resumed. A couple with matching backpacks argued softly about a map. Daniel leaned on a railing that had held up 1,000 men who thought they might fall and didn't. His phone buzzed. Private number. He hesitated, then answered. Yes. A voice came through, low and mechanically distorted, and because the world had tipped, Daniel accepted that too. Mr. Cole, the voice said. You don't know me. Call me Archer. The river went very quiet. You put a drive in my apartment, Daniel said, hearing the calm he didn't feel. That seems likely, Archer said. The distortion fuzzed his consonants into something almost polite. I'm calling because we are about to become very close. I have a lawyer, Daniel said. I have several, Archer said. I prefer you unadvised. What do you want? I want what everyone wants, Archer said. Leverage, control, an audience. Daniel stared at a ferry, shearing water. You frame me. Why call? Because a frame is not the art, Archer said, and Daniel could hear the smile, even filtered through electronics. The art is the reveal. The misdirection is only delicious if the spectator later sees how they were fooled. I'm not a spectator, Daniel said. Everyone is a spectator until they act, Archer said. I'm inviting you to act. To do what? To be vindicated, Archer said simply. You will not find that in a courtroom. You will not find it at your boardroom table. You will find it where the lie started. And where did it start? Daniel asked. With your friend, Archer said, and let the word hang. With Elliot. The wind lifted, smelling of diesel and salt. Daniel gripped the railing. Say that again. Archer chuckled, and the filter turned it into a smear of sound. Bring your mind, Mr. Cole. Don't bring your phone. West 45th Street, the old parking garage with the painted wolf on the wall. 15 minutes. Or don't come. Your story ends one way if you don't, another if you do. The line clicked. Daniel stared at his phone as if it might answer the question of which world was less dangerous. The one where a stranger called Archer had engineered his fall, or the one where Elliot, his brother in everything but blood, had. "Don't bring your phone," Archer had said. He powered it off. He slipped it into the pocket of a passing trash can with an apologetic pat, as if he were setting down a pet he couldn't keep. He turned and started to run. The city opened in front of him the way it does when you have a destination and a countdown. He cut up 11th, lungs burning, the afternoon tilting into evening like a tray. West 45th loomed with its old warehouses and new glass, an overlap of ages that made him think of their garage and the glass ribs of Vesper. The parking garage with the painted wolf was impossible to miss. 3 stories of tired concrete and a mural that had seen better days, the wolf's eye peeling into a tear. The entrance's metal gate was rolled up. A hand-lettered sign hung crooked, cash only. Daniel stepped into cool shadow, the air smelling of oil and rain and secrets. "Mr. Cole," Archer's voice said, and this time it came from a speaker somewhere in the dark. "Up 1 level. Keep left." He did as instructed, because he had learned that sometimes the only way to map a maze is to walk it. He climbed a ramp mottled with oil flowers. On the 2nd floor, the light was the color of a bruise. At the far corner, where the mural's wolf head bled onto concrete, a figure stood near a table. The figure was tall and nondescript the way the watcher on the street had been nondescript, so perfectly average that it called attention to itself only if you were looking for it. The table held 3 things: a phone, a manila envelope the size of a truth, and a tie. Midnight blue, patterned like rain. Daniel didn't realize he'd moved until he was beside the table, staring. He lifted the tie with a careful hand. It was Elliot's. No, it was his. The one he'd worn to the boardroom. The one around his neck. The man across the space stepped forward and the light told across his face, a face so forgettable it might as well have been drawn by committee. He reached up and tugged his own tie. Midnight blue, patterned like rain. "Costume change," Archer said, voice no longer distorted. It was average. It was barbershop. It was the voice of a man who could ask you if you wanted fries with that, or could ask you if you wanted to lose everything. "You left yours at the courthouse earlier." Easy switch in a crowded hallway. Daniel blinked and, too fast, saw it. "Some lead to your own house. Either way, you'll follow. And if I don't..." Archer glanced at the painted wolf's eye. "Then someone else will. The story is hungry. You can feed it or be eaten by it." Daniel stared at the envelope. He thought of Avery's whisper. He thought of Malik's analytics. He thought of Elliot at the head of the table, hands placed just so, as if they belonged there. He reached for the envelope. Archer's hand snapped out and held it down with 2 fingers. The gesture was almost affectionate. 2 minutes, Avery said, eyes on the door. 1, he said. "I built this like a narcissist. It wants to be seen." The cursor blinked. The script asked him to name the honeypot repo. He typed /MNT/archives/cold store/col_TMP and felt a petty joy. "Done," he said, and the word felt like taking a breath after a long dive. They closed the box, closed the room. They walked back, leading a ghost of normal. In a janitor's closet with a mop that smelled like high school, he took out the burner and opened a terminal session piped through the watcher. Number scrolled. Nothing at first. Then, 1 line. Access attempt. col/repo. Cold store/source. 10.68.21.7. Avery's head snapped toward the screen like a divining rod. Who is 10.68.21.7? In theory, he said. The system that monitors the system. In practice, someone being cute. Another line. Log entry added incident queue. High. Then, log entry modified incident queue moderate. He frowned. They were downgrading his fake crime in real time, the opposite of what he expected. Then another move. Replication. Offsite mirror number 3. Why replicate? Avery whispered. Because they need the fake to be real enough to be found by a third party, he said. If their auditor finds replicated tampering, they can say they didn't plant it. A map flashed. routing through 172.16.4.3 relay 192.0.2.44. Avery whistled low. 192.0.2.0/24 is reserved for examples and documentation, which makes it the perfect place to hide a very real endpoint behind a very fake range, he said. You only see it if you know how to resolve the resolution. He traced a route in his mind like a subway line he'd ridden twice. Internal net to a staging relay to. He stopped. The final resolved endpoint was masked behind an old partner link. One he knew like he knew every scar on his hand/partners/VanceOps/. The name hit him like a ball-peen hammer. VanceOps, Avery read. Subdomain on our own partner portal. Jesus. Another line. Offsite mirror ACK. And then, archive receipt. Fain and Company. He blinked. They're dropping a copy into an escrow trust, he said, for authenticity, in case anyone disputes the chain. They're building the lies paperwork as they go. They learn from us, Avery said. We taught them that documentation wins. It does, he said a little vengefully. For us, too. The Watcher sent one last line. Repo access by Evance. Avery stared at him. He stared at her. The letters lay there like a confession spelled by a lazy criminal or a very smart one. Could be a plant, she whispered. Could be a signature, he said, and felt the room tilt slightly, his stomach sway to catch it. Outside the closet, a door opened down the hall, and a voice rang cheerful. Hey, maintenance? Anyone in there? Avery's eyes widened. Rover's back early. This way, Daniel said. He cracked the closet door, listened to the footfalls, held his breath the way he'd trained himself to as a kid hiding cookies past bedtime. When the footsteps retreated, he slid out, Avery behind him, their backs to the wall like children playing thieves because they didn't have the heart to play cops. At the freight elevator, the cameras read, I stared blind. They rode down in a box that had carried more fear than they were adding to it. At the dock, they moved as if carrying heavy things, because people carrying heavy things are invisible. On the street, he exhaled so hard it felt like he lost height. Go home, Avery said, clipboard hugging her chest like armor. Email me from nothing you own. Give me an hour to get back into the audit. If Quinn calls at 7 a.m., we'll need to be ahead of the story by dawn. Archer said the first breadcrumb would break my heart, he said. He was early. Avery looked at him the way people look at a man on a ledge. Get some sleep. He nodded. Sleep was a lie he wanted to believe. He turned away, counting his steps against the rhythm of a city that had watched better men survive worse days and not tell the story right. He didn't go home. He went back to the storage locker, to suitcase, to the stupid laptop with the taped eye. He fed the Watcher stream into the VM's cloned environment and watched as the Advanced access propagated again, like a signature scribbled on carbon paper. He searched the VM's mail cache for Advance. He found one archive training newsletter with a sentimental blurb Elliot had written years ago about culture being the code your company runs when no one is watching. He found no direct emails. He found a calendar invite to a donor breakfast at a hotel where businessmen wash their hands for sport. He found a travel receipt, 2 seats to D.C., the day after tomorrow. He wrote Fain on the notepad and circled it. He wrote Antonia and underlined it. He wrote Vance Ops Mirror number 3 Fain and drew a little sick heart beside it because comedy and tragedy share an organ. At 2 a.m., the burner vibrated. Malik, you're an idiot for calling me, Daniel said by way of hello. I'm not, Malik said. You're an idiot for leaving breadcrumbs that say Advance like a neon sign. You saw it too, Daniel said. I set my own Watcher ages ago. Just smaller, Malik said, pride and apology in equal measure. I just watched someone push a replication packet through the partner portal labeled VanceOps and then accidentally trigger a third-party escrow deposit to a trust that shows up on Fain's public ledger, if you know where to look. Archer forced their hand, Daniel said. He set up the trap. We sprung it. They did what they always do, launder it with process. Archer, Malik repeated. You hate him, Daniel said. I hate that I love that he exists, Malik said. Listen, if we have a Vance and a mirror to Fain, we don't need to scream into the storm. We need a judge who loves documentation as much as Quinn does. But to get that, we need a smoking gun. We need Elliot, Daniel said, and the name felt like a stone that knew your name back. Tomorrow, Malik said. Today, whatever time it is. I'll keep digging. You keep not getting arrested. Working on it, Daniel said. He hung up and stared at the painted cinder block wall until it softened into an idea. In his father's union hall, there had been a phrase Daniel had at first misunderstood and then learned to fear. Card check. You called men into a room, and you made them show who they were with a piece of paper that could end a friendship. He rubbed his eyes and saw Archer flipping a coin, the coin landing on its edge and spinning forever. His burner buzzed again, a number he now knew by the way his stomach reacted. Mr. Cole, Archer said, and the distortion this time made his name sound like weather. You did well. We are on the second act. Your first breadcrumb did what you promised, Daniel said. It broke something. Good, Archer said, with the satisfaction of a man aligning a frame. Tomorrow, you go to feign when the light is pretty. They like pretty. And he paused. You will receive an invitation soon. Accept it. What invitation? The kind that comes on letterhead and smells like cedar, Archer said. You will be offered a story in which you are not the villain. You will be offered redemption without truth. Do not take it. Why warn me? Daniel asked. Isn't that the satisfyingly tragic ending? Archer chuckled. I don't like tragedies that pretend to be mercies. Too easy. Elliot, Daniel said. Is he your client? Archer's silence was a nod in a dark room. I'm not anyone's anything, Mr. Cole. I am the weather at a particular time. The line went dead. He closed the laptop. He put his head against the cool metal of the storage unit door and listened to the hum of the building's undramatic heart. He thought about Elliot at that diner with Antonia, about the way Eli's hands moved when he lied, small, controlled circles as if drawing a halo he could live under. He thought about being 12 and prying at the leather corner of his father's ledger until the old man's palm came down, hard and clean, on the back of his hand. You ask first, his father had said, where you take your licks. Daniel had asked. The world had delivered the licks anyway. At dawn, the city turned the color of paper left in a sunlit window. He stepped out into a morning his life did not recognize. The street had the soft chaos of early deliveries. He bought a bagel he didn't eat. He wiped cream cheese on a napkin and drew a line from Advance to mirror number 3 to Fane and back to Antonia, and then, because he couldn't help himself, back to Archer. He drew the line thicker where it crossed Vance Ops. His burner thrummed. An email sent to a throwaway address he hadn't given anyone. The subject line, invitation. The logo at the top smelled like cedar even through pixels. Vesper Dynamics. Dear Mr. Cole, it read, velvet over wire. In light of recent developments and our shared history, the board would like to offer you a dignified resolution. Please join us today at 3 p.m. to discuss a path forward. We are motivated by respect and the best interests of all parties. Sincerely, Chairwoman Quinn. He stared at it until the letters got legs. A dignified resolution. Redemption without truth. He typed accept. He hit send. He stood on the sidewalk, the morning putting on its loud jewelry, and told himself that the meeting was a table, not a trap. That a man could walk into a room full of wolves and walk out with a leash and not be the dog. In his pocket, the notepad's edge dug into his leg where breadcrumb 5 told him what his father would have. Leverage, not threat. At 2:50 p.m., he would walk into his old building. At 2:51, he would read the room. At 2:52, he would decide whether to burn down the story or inherit it. At 2:49 p.m., as he reached the revolving doors, Elliot would step into the lobby, light hitting him like it loves him, and say, Dan, glad you came. And at 2:53, just before Daniel drew breath to answer, the glass wall to their left would explode inward, not with a bomb or a bullet, but with the sudden, astonishing force of a man hurling a metal chair through it, a man Daniel knew by the tilt of his shoulders, even though he had never seen him run before. Malik. He hit the floor with the chair's momentum and skidded into security's legs like a bowling ball. Papers flew. Shouts reached for their big boy voices. A woman screamed the way people scream when their phone thinks it's been dropped. Malik looked up at Daniel from the marble, his glasses twisted, his breath coming like a run had hurt him. He said, panting, laughing in the hysterical way people laugh when the plot outruns them, "Don't sign anything. They're moving the money now." And then the security guard's arm went around Malik's throat, and Daniel's old badge, canceled, humiliated, lit once in his pocket like a heart remembering itself. The chair clanged across marble, a metallic earthquake. Security scrambled. Elliot's hand shot out, protective and theatrical, guiding Daniel backward like a host steering a guest away from spilled wine. "Easy," Elliot said to no one, to everyone. "Let's not make a scene." Malik barked from the floor, wrenching himself sideways so the guard's arm slid from his throat to his shoulder. "Buddy," the scene already started. Two more guards converged. Avery appeared from a corridor with a clipboard like a passport. "Stop," she said in the tone that makes metal listen. "I scheduled a maintenance window and a freight movement at 11. This is neither, which means this is not a security incident. It's an operations incident, and unless you want Quinn asking why ops did a hot handoff in the lobby, you'll unfist yourselves." The bigger guard blinked at the word unfist as if it were a tool he didn't own. He relaxed a degree. Malik wriggled free, got his feet, and stood in that stubborn angle he got when math had hit a wall. Elliot gave Daniel the kind of half-smile that had greased half their early deals. "Let's take this upstairs. Quinn is waiting." Malik's breath sawed. "Quinn can wait. The mirror can't." Avery's eyes flicked. "Play it cool." Daniel let Eli shepherd him into the elevator because theatrics needed an audience and power likes to perform in glass. 28 glowed. The elevator hummed and reflected back 5 faces. Elliot polished, Daniel drawn tight, Malik with a thread of blood at his temple, Avery a statue of competence, a guard pretending the mirror was a horizon. "Explain," Daniel said low. Malik shoved a phone at him. His own screen spidered from the chair crash. An SSH session opened, text marching. "Your watcher sang." Then something sang back. At 2:31 p.m., Evans pushed a second replication packet. Bigger, messier, like a man packing a suitcase under a fire alarm. It went out to mirror #3, and then it forked. "Forked where?" Avery whispered. "Fane," Malik said, "but not the usual escrow bucket. A sub-bucket. Thorne's back office. The one that doesn't admit it's a back office." "Thorne," Elliot said lightly. "From Fane and Company?" "Daniel, you've been networking in charming circles." The doors opened to the boardroom floor. Quinn stood at the end of the hall, flanked by counsel-like quotation marks. "In exchange, Mr. Cole will resign voluntarily. Issue a statement acknowledging judgment errors that no," Daniel said, "reflect neither malice nor criminal intent." "No," he repeated. Elliot inhaled like he was about to speak the sentence that would save the room from its own mess. Daniel cut him off with a finger. "Before anyone offers me redemption without truth, you should see what the truth looks like when it stops being shy." He glanced at Avery. She moved like electricity. 3 steps, a cable unspooled from her bag, a laptop materializing on the table with a screen share to the wall. Malik slid in beside her, puffy breaths evening into the rhythm he got when code obeyed him. The screen filled with terminal windows, pretty as a nightmare to the uninitiated. Daniel spoke for the uninitiated because he had pitched under fluorescence, and new translation is a weapon. "You can assert anything in a dark room full of letters, Mr. Cole." "I can," he said calmly. "I can also point at the light." He nodded to Avery. She pulled up the watcher stream. Lines cascaded, annotated with human words. "Access attempt, log entry added, log entry modified." Then they're out. 172.16.4.3 relay 192.0.2.44. A tap, a resolve, a reveal/partners/VanceOps/. Malik traced with a laser pointer he didn't need. "From internal to a relay to our partner portal," he narrated. "Where it gets cute is here. The endpoint resolves to a folder that shouldn't exist, reserved IP space used as a blind label. Behind it, a very real machine authenticating with a token minted by our own partner registry. Who has right perms to partner registry? Ops." Avery didn't look at Quinn. She didn't need to. From partner portal, Malik continued to offsite mirror number 3. Then, at 2:31 p.m. today, another replication event. But with a fork. He flipped to a capture of an HTTPS request header purring, full of metadata. See this field? X-escrow destination. Fane/backoffice/Thorn. Never appears in any of our documentation. Appears today. Who benefits? Follow the paperwork. Documentation wins, Daniel said softly. You taught us that, Ms. Quinn. So we built some. Quinn's counsel lifted an entirely different poker face. What you've captured could be staged by a disgruntled ex-employee. Then why is your partner portal authenticating an endpoint for Vance Ops? Avery cut in voice level eyes not. Why does a Vance show up in the access trail like a signature that thinks it's clever? All eyes pinballed to Elliot. Elliot didn't blink. Vance, he said with almost a chuckle. Could be anyone. E for engineering. Vance for Vesperin. Cute prank by someone who doesn't like me. Antonia touched the window with one matte nail, as if assessing the glass's tensile strength. Or it's exactly what it looks like, and we're all merely actors in Mr. Cole's drama, she purred. Mr. Cole, you've always had a flair for martyrdom, and you for plausible deniability, Daniel said. Quinn's voice clapped twice without clapping. Enough. Mr. Cole, even if these visuals show a manipulation, that does not absolve you. Why would someone frame you, if not for cause? Why do con artists pick marks? Daniel asked. Because they're visible. Because the trick needs an audience. Because people will believe the most dangerous story, the one they're ready to tell anyway. A silence opened with good posture. Antonia smiled at it antiseptically. Daniel breathed. We can debate motives. Or we can finish the card check. Quinn's eyebrows ticked. What card check? The one my father used to run in a union hall, Daniel said. You take names into a room, and you make them show who they are with a piece of paper that can end a friendship. We're going to do it with keys. He turned to Malik, who already had the company's key management service dashboard up in a split window. Pull recent issuance logs for partner tokens named Vance Ops. Show admins of record, signers, approvers. List populated like a litany. Timestamps, token IDs, signer hashes. A column labeled approver blinked into human names. Approver, A. Reyes approver, E. Vance approver, S. Golly, proxy. Avery flinched. That's the pressure call I told you about, she said to the room, jaw set. Midnight. Distorted voice reads my brother's school. I approved knowing I'd flag it. I flagged it. Audit got canceled the morning Daniel was arrested. Quinn stared at her like a microscope, deciding whether the slide is interesting. You should have escalated. I did, she said. To the person who schedules, deploys, and controls when things get escalated. 3 heads, including counsels, turned to Elliot. He spread his hands, palms clean. I sign 100 things a week. We all do. Partner ops are routine. If my name is there, it's because the process put it there, or because someone wants it there. Pull the key signers public cert, Daniel said. Malik did. Strings of hex. He ran it through an internal lookup. A match flashed. Signer device. 8C. 12. AF. EA. 77. MacBook Pro EV. Avery didn't hide her wince. We name engineer devices by initials. Elliot smiled like a man humoring a child who insists the magician really pulled a coin from their ear. Cute and trivial to spoof. You forge my signer cert. Name a machine after me. And suddenly I'm a bad guy? Anyone with Archer's resources could manage that. Antonia's gaze sharpened at the name. Archer, ask your late-night diner date, Daniel said, nodding at her. Her eyes didn't flicker. Mr. Vance and I meet publicly. A pleasure of legitimate business. Yours are Fane's, Malik muttered. Quinn steepled fingers. This froth is not evidence. It's a map, Daniel said, and we followed it to a door with thorn carved into the frame. You want evidence? Get a warrant. Seize mirror number 3. Seize Fane's back office buckets. Subpoena the audit suppression that happened the morning of my arrest. You think I call the DA like I order lunch? Quinn asked dry. I think you care about your name, he said. And you know what a civil RICO whisper can do to a stock price when the words trust services and back office sit in the same paragraph. The word Rico changed the room's temperature. Counsel sat up straighter. Antonia's eyelid did a controlled twitch, the body's version of a lawyer clearing their throat. Elliot stepped toward Daniel in a way the old Elliot would have, warm in confidence. Dan, you're spiraling. Don't do this to yourself. I'm not spiraling, Daniel said, and surprised himself by meaning it. I'm staking a claim. Avery's laptop chimed. She glanced, then paled. Quinn, offsite mirror number 3 just initiated a purge. Emergency storage optimization. It will delete the last 24 hours of replication deltas. Who has rights to trigger that? Daniel asked. Avery didn't look at him. Ops. Chair. CFO. And she stopped. Antonia. Via consent decree during the last suit settlement. Valaris was granted read-only oversight with a right to request emergency purges in case of data exfiltration. Everyone's eyes slid to Antonia. She inspected one perfect cuticle. This is a publicly traded company, Quinn said slowly. You did not just, I requested nothing, Antonia said, expression demure as a dagger. If your systems comply with requests no one made, that is a different problem. Mirrors purging, Malik said. In 60 seconds, that fork to thorn is gone unless what? Quinn snapped. Unless we beat it, Daniel said. We need a hard stop on purge jobs. A global kill switch. There isn't one, Avery said. By design, no single human can. Daniel looked at Elliot. Elliot's smile showed a canine. Why do you think I signed 100 things a week? Because I like pens? Card check, Daniel said softly. Show your card. Elliot held Daniel's gaze, then looked at Quinn, then at Antonia, weighing which audience mattered more. If there's an emergency, we act, he said. We don't wring hands. He walked to Avery's keyboard with the confidence of a man who considered all keyboards his. His fingers moved in a sequence Daniel had never been taught, and, that hurt, had never been invited to learn. A hidden admin panel bloomed like a rare flower. System maintainer mode. A timer ticked. 48 seconds. Global override token, Elliot said. Chair plus maintainer must agree. Quinn? Quinn's mouth thinned, then flattened. She stepped behind Elliot, typed credentials that made the room hold its breath. A second box, consent. The timer said 35 seconds. Antonia, Elliot said, not looking at her, you don't get a vote. Pity, she murmured. Elliot typed his token. The screen flashed. Override granted. Purge aborted. The timer froze at 28 seconds and vanished. Daniel's chest unclenched in a sudden ache that made him dizzy. Relief had edges. It cut too. Elliot stepped back, dusting invisible flour from his hands. There, he said. Crisis averted. Now, can we stop playing movie and behave like executives? No, Avery said, throat tight. Now we take a forensic snapshot. Done, Malik said, already hammering. Mirror number 3 locked to worm. Write once, read many, read only state. Chain of custody, doc, auto-generated. Judges love that. Send it to counsel, Daniel said. Not just ours. The DA's office. Whistleblower portal. And he swallowed, tasted bile and resolve. Send it to the Valaris case monitor. Antonia's attention moved with surgical precision. Careful, Mr. Cole. No threats, he said. Leverage. Quinn's eyes, sea glass calm, landed on Daniel. What do you want? There it was. The question con men ask marks only after they've felt the wallet. The question his father said separates a tantrum from a negotiation. I want the truth to outrun the story, Daniel said. Publicly, with your signature in mind. A joint statement that Vesper discovered anomalous access logged under my credentials, that we preserved evidence suggesting a manipulation routed through partner systems, that we are cooperating with law enforcement. I will not sign a resignation. I will sign a leave pending resolution, paid. Avery stays. Malik stays. Independent auditor of our choosing. Not Valaris's favorite cousin. Preposterous, counsel sputtered. Necessary, Malik said, because when this hits the tech press, and it will, investors will choose between a clean process narrative and a soap opera. Quinn's gaze hovered over him like a hawk, deciding if the field mouse has earned another day. Your demands assume your innocence. My demands assume your survival, Daniel said. You can cut me loose and pray the market likes blood. Or you can show your house is stronger than a rumor. Antonia's laugh was elegant and ugly, and Mr. Cole rides away washed in sunlight. No, Daniel said, and let her see he meant it. I'll walk into a longer fight. Silence took the head of the table. Elliot's tongue pressed against his cheek, a tick no brand consultant had ever sanded away. I can get behind a version of that, he said. We position ourselves as vigilant, not complicit. We let the process paint Daniel whatever color it likes, but we stand at a photogenic distance. What a generous brother, Daniel said. You're the one who insists we're family, Elliot said quietly, and the words landed in a place nostalgia had kept unlocked. Quinn raised a palm. Draft it, she told counsel. Now, I want 3 paragraphs by the time I finish my tea. She turned to Antonia. Ms. Vale, please inform your client that any purge requests in our ecosystem will require 60 minutes notice in writing. Antonia's smile was art. I'll pass along your preferences. And, Ms. Vale, Quinn added, without changing tone, if your client is found to have exfiltrated our data or inserted code through our partner portal, I will personally turn your favorite trust services into case studies. Antonia's bruised apple mouth inclined. Always a pleasure, Chairwoman. The meeting dissolved into tasks. Counsel typed. Malik documented. Avery ran interference on 3 separate alert storms, popping in various dashboards like champagne corks. Daniel stepped into the hallway because the room had too much past in it. Elliot followed, of course. He leaned on the glass, looking out at a city that had made him feel taller since he was 22. You always did love the dramatic, he said. I learned from the best, Daniel said. Believe it or not, Elliot said mildly. I'm trying to keep the place from burning down. Believe it or not, Daniel replied. So am I. They stood in a pause long enough to be mistaken for peace. Archer, Elliot said then, tasting the name. He's been whispering in your ear. He's been leaving breadcrumbs, Daniel said. Funny, Elliot said. He's been trying to sell me baskets. Daniel turned. What did he offer you? A clean story, Elliot said. The kind that ends with a book deal and a speaking tour. All I'd have to do is let you take a fall you could survive. And in return, control, Elliot said. The kind that wears a halo. The kind you and I used to dream about when we were eating noodles on your radiator. He looked at Daniel, gentle. We're not those guys anymore. No, Daniel said. We're the guys in the story we said we'd never be. Elliot's smile this time wasn't pretty. Maybe the story didn't give us a choice. Daniel stepped closer, lowered his voice because truth always sounds too loud. There is always a choice. And you made yours when you sat in my chair before the ink on my arrest record dried. Elliot's eyes flashed. Hurt, anger, pride, something too old to be either. I sat where the company needed me. Worked out well for your initials, Daniel said. Advance fits nicely in the access logs. He expected the denial. He got something worse, pity. That's the part you can't see, Elliot said softly. It had to be me. If it wasn't my name in there, it would be yours and only yours, and then there'd be no oxygen left for a correction. Archer doesn't play fair, Dan. He plays final. Then stop playing, Daniel said. I can't, Elliot said, and the honesty of it made Daniel hate him less and the problem more. Not anymore. Avery appeared, all clipped function. We need both of you, she said. Now, back in the room, counsel had the draft. 3 paragraphs of legal silk. Daniel read and made 2 edits. Alleged where they wanted confirmed, preserved where they wanted attempted. Quinn initialed with a flick. She looked at Daniel. This is a truce, she said. Not a treaty. Good, he said. Treaties bore me. They blasted the statement to the wire. The market would read it in 15 seconds and decide in 16 whether to punish or withhold mercy. Antonia checked something on her phone, smirked, and left with a graceful efficiency that made Daniel want to check if his wallet was still in his pocket. The room emptied. Malik slumped into a chair, glasses askew, joy and terror duking it out on his face. We bought time, he said. Not truth. We'll spend it, Daniel said. Avery's phone vibrated. She glanced, then held it out. Unknown. Distorted, she said. Archer. Daniel took it. He didn't say hello. Card check, Archer said, amused. Well played. You put the cards in the deck, Daniel said. I just read what you printed. You still have to cut, Archer said. Fane expects visitors in 30 minutes. Bring a lawyer you trust to ask polite questions in impolite tones. And bring your friend who throws chairs. I like him. Why help me? Daniel asked. What's your end? Same, Archer said, and Daniel could hear the smile, could see the forgettable face brightening like a coin under dull light. Leverage, control, an audience. You already have those. I want a new trick, Archer said. One I can't do alone. Mr. Thorne's back office holds contracts you haven't seen. Some with signatures that will make you soft. Some with signatures that will make you hard. If you enter Vindication, you have to decide which ones you burn and which ones you file. The line clicked dead. Malik rubbed his face. I'm too old to be this awake in the afternoon. You're 37, Avery said dryly. My cells are 80, Malik said. Where are we going? Fane, Daniel said. Back office. Elliot tilted his head. I'll come. No, Daniel said too fast. You'll stay. Someone has to mind the global override token and smile for the cameras if the market has a mood. And if you want to help me, don't sign anything you can't unsign. Elliot's jaw worked. He nodded once. Bring me something I can use. Bring me a version of you I can trust, Daniel returned. They moved. Malik grabbed his bag and a bottle of water like a man packing for a sprint. Avery tucked the worm-link printouts into a folder and slid it under her jacket, as if it were a holster weapon. Daniel looked down at his hands and saw they had stopped shaking. On the sidewalk, the city had switched to an afternoon roar. Taxis bleated. A tourist took a picture of a building that would not thank them. Daniel hailed a cab, because urgency needs props. Malik slid in, Avery behind him. Daniel gave the driver the address. Fane and company looked the same. Brushed steel, polite money. Inside, the same receptionist lifted the same smile. Back office, Daniel said. She did not ask for Mr. Thorne this time. Down the hall, she said. Second door. They walked on whisper carpet. The door opened engineeredly. Mr. Thorne stood, immaculate boredom in a different tie. Mr. Cole, he said, you have a nose for timing. Timing has a nose for us, Daniel said. We'd like to see the escrow record for mirror number 3, subbucket back office, /Thorne, timestamp 1431. We'd also like to see the contracts attached to entities managed by your firm that have E. Vance or A. Vale as officers or signatories of any capacity. And we'd like a receipt trail. Thorne's brows rose a carefully measured millimeter. And you've brought? Independent verification, Avery said, sliding the folder onto the credenza. Worm snapshot. Chain of custody. A bottle of water, Malik added. For your conscience. Thorne's mouth twitched. Do you have a court order? No, Daniel said. We have leverage. Threats bore me, Thorne replied. Not a threat, Daniel said, and recited, calm as a man reading a recipe. 18 U.C. Section 1519. Document destruction with intent to impede. 3 figures and a jumpsuit for anyone who helps. We're preserving. You'll be an accessory or a participant. Pick. Thorne regarded him the way a fence regards a man with bolt cutters, with respect edged in dislike. Then he sighed in a way that conceded that paperwork and gravity always win. Come, he said, leading them to a smaller room with a table and a smell of ozone. A young woman in a navy suit materialized from a side door like a ghost that does compliance. Retrieve the specified bucket, Thorne said. Mirror number 3, back office /Thorne, timestamp 1431. And the contract matrix for entities with the names Mr. Cole mentioned. She moved with the efficiency of terror. Monitors bloomed. Log scrolled. A list assembled on screen. Trust names anonymized into alphanumerics with nicknames that were jokes only rich men understood. Caraway, Glasshouse, Silent Spring. The escrow record appeared. A manifest of files, hashed and cross-hashed, labeled with internal identifiers that knew they were never meant to be read out loud. There, near the top, replicate _ Evance _ 2-31 p.m. package, and attached an auto-generated memorandum of deposit indicating origin headers, including ex-escrow destination. Print, Thorne said. The printer whispered out evidence like a man whispering apologies. Contracts, Daniel said. The matrix filled, boxes to check, lines to chase. The compliance ghost ran queries with fingers that never lengthened or shortened. Perfect tools. Names resolved. A handful of documents populated a pane. Thorne watched Daniel without watching the screen. I will, of course, redact as required. Redact nothing, Daniel said. You can send us the redacted later for your records. Save the full for the people who sign warrants. Something on the screen made Avery inhale. What? Daniel asked. She pointed. A signature block on a contract for Silent Spring LLC, dated 6 months ago. Authorized signatory, Elliot Vance. Beneath it, a second signatory. Witness, Antonia Vale. Malik exhaled a single adult syllable. Well, and here, Avery said, flipping to another. Glasshouse licensing agreement. Beneficiary of trust with Thorne's desk smell. Authorized signatory, E. Vance. Clause 14. Contingency payouts triggered by change in control events at Vesper Dynamics. Daniel's ribs went cold. Change in control, he murmured. Like, Malik said gently, if a founder resigns under a cloud. Thorne's face remained a polite piece of architecture. A third document loaded. Caraway Operations Mal. Notably, the signatory wasn't Elliot. It was a proxy with a name Daniel didn't know. But in the witness line, A. Reyes. Avery recoiled. That's not. She leaned in, eyes flicking, disgust blossoming into recognition. That's my signature. From a vendor onboarding last year. Pasted. Sloppy. Not sloppy, Malik said. Confident. They never expected the back office to see the front. Daniel steadied himself on the chair back. He felt an odd calm, the kind you get when the worst finally resolves into view and you can stop squinting. He looked at Thorne. We'll take copies, he said. Full, digital, and hard. We'll also take this room under the jurisdiction of common sense until the DA gets here. Call you general counsel. Tell them we're preserving, not pillaging. I do not take phone orders from men with adrenaline, Thorne said coolly. You do if you want to keep practicing, Daniel said, then softened because leverage works better with a door left open. Mr. Thorne, I am going to make you a friend later. Right now, I'm going to make you a witness. Choose the role. Something in Thorne's eyes, a calculation being done in a ledger older than Archer, clicked. He nodded to the compliance ghost. Mirror the bucket, he said. 2 drives. Seal them. Witness signatures. On it, she murmured. Malik stepped aside to call. Quinn, he said into his phone. We have receipts. Don't let Elliot talk you into spinning. Send our GC and, yes, and that ADA you play squash with. Avery typed a note to herself, as if to keep her hands from shaking. Daniel stood very still and watched the printer deliver the story in increments. His burner buzzed. Unknown. He answered. Mr. Cole, Archer said. Did you find anything heartbreaking? Enough to make a cardiologist rich, Daniel said. Good, Archer said. Now you have a choice. I hate your choices, Daniel said. That's because they're real, Archer said cheerfully. You could take those documents and blow up Elliot. He deserves it. The narrative will be clean, golden boy tarnished, wronged founder restored. You will win, and you will learn that winning and being right are different currencies that buy different friends. What's behind door 2? Daniel asked, tasting the bitterness of curiosity. You inherit the con, Archer said softly. You decide which of those entities we collapse and which we keep. You redirect flows away from the hands that intended them and into the ones that will build. You become what you're already pretending not to be. The man who understands that systems don't run on virtue. They run on pressure. You're asking me to launder, Daniel said. I'm asking you to choose a world you can live in, Archer said. Not the one you can preach at. You want vindication? It is not a courtroom verdict. It is a power structure rearranged. Decide whether you want to make a speech or a blueprint. The line went quiet at his end, not dead, just waiting. Daniel watched Avery watch her stolen signature print in gray. He watched Malik watch hash values with the hungry calm of a man who loves proof. He thought of Eli, hands on a keyboard, aborting a purge because he wanted to keep the house standing even as he rented out rooms under a false name. He thought of his father at a card check, calling out names, men stepping forward, the air heavy with future. Door 3, Daniel said finally. Archer laughed, delighted. Make your own game? I burn what poisons the house, Daniel said. I build what protects the workers. If a trust routes stolen value, it dies. If a shell wraps legitimate IP that got thrown in the wash with lies, we rinse it and bolt it to the floor. I won't be part of your gallery. You already are, Archer said, pleased. But I respect the interior decorator. The line clicked off. Archer watched him go, with unperformed interest. He won't stop, he said. I don't need him to, I said. I need him to be seen. Malik checked the logger. We got the handoff. Timestamp's clean. Lamplight's bad, but geometry doesn't lie. The DA will like the lines. Good, Archer said. Now we put your polite bricks guts to work. The maintainer token will try to announce itself to the trustee within the hour. You will intercept the first hello with a hello that sounds like a lawyer. No lawyer, I said. Not at 2 a.m. On paper in the morning. For now, we announced to his system. Archer handed me one of the USB-C sticks. This one spoofs a more responsible universe. We decamped to a maintenance bench that didn't much care for humans. Malik balanced the logger on his knee and the stick on the logger and the river on his patience. He typed like the night owed him quiet. Tokens live, he said after a minute. Ping to dead drop. We can ping back with a registration that routes to the DA's evidence bucket. Not elegant. Perfect, I said. I'm done with elegant. He executed. The polite brick blinked. Somewhere, the key told a ledger that it was not in Elliot's pocket. It was in a neutral place with rules and counters and signatures and people who would get out of bed for subpoenas. I breathed. The air smelled like river and rust and the quiet violence of systems being told no. Archer closed the Pelican case, businesslike. You'll have 6 hours before anyone starts screaming, he said. Use them. Draft your declaration. Call your ADA friend. When Quinn wakes, she needs to find you not in a defensive crouch, but in the lobby with a clipboard. Where will you be? Malik asked. Rooting for narrative, Archer said, and cleaning up after my messes. He turned to go, then paused. One more breadcrumb, he said without theatrics. You use Advance and found Elliot. Good, but you ignored a shadow name you saw earlier that didn't feel. The magician with the cards at that party? He used more than one. You know one. Find the other. It's written into the back door that Avery signed under duress. What other? I asked. Archer's smile was small. The one that breaks your heart differently. Check the lint. Lint, Malik repeated, offended as a coder. What lint? Archer didn't answer. He ghosted into the dark the way men like him ghost. Not by vanishing, but by making your attention embarrassed for having been so focused. We stood in the cold that had convinced the river to look like metal. Malik hunched into his jacket, checked the logger again, then tucked it away. Lint, he said again, chewing like a bad variable. In code, lint is cruft, style warnings, stray threads. Threads, I said. Archer doesn't waste nouns. We started back. The city's late was becoming someone else's early. Cabs yawned. Bakeries lit ovens. I could feel the key against my ribs like a confession, finally put somewhere safe. At the storage locker, suitcase hummed awake like it had been dreaming on our behalf. Malik loaded the watcher capture, pinned it to the worm snapshot, and Saints Be Praised documented the handoff with angles and numbers that would make a judge's heart purr. I opened the VM's diff tools and dove into the dependency graft Avery had signed, the one she could reconstruct out of petty pride and perfect memory. Line by line, we walked the backdoor scaffolding, the part that spliced a whisper into a library loader's ear and taught it to mishear. There, Malik said, fingers stabbing the air. The comment block. A comment in a sea of minified nothingness. Unnecessary. Arrogant. A mistake or a signature. For lines, //patch. Hotfix_lint // author. Archer, ha. // 4. Advance // reviewed by Ivy Archer's joke and Elliot's name, I said. All of it. No. Reviewed_by is a lie. They dressed the crime in familiar notes. Malik zoomed out, then in, like he could change reality's resolution by will. Look at the key. Variable names. They use snake_case everywhere except here. He pointed. Camel case for 3 local functions. No one on our team writes camel case. Not since like the garage days. What about the garage days? I asked and felt the first cold thread wind up my spine. Eli wrote camel case back then, Malik said, until I mocked him into joining the 21st century. My throat tightened. Who else? He didn't look at me. You. It sits in you, that kind of remembering. The time you stayed late and were so tired you wrote like you did when you were 22 and your professor had told you style was a religion. The muscle memory of naming things with capitals like you were trying to make them stand up straighter. Focus, I said, like a man telling himself not to fall downstairs. Archer said Lint, and Lint is a hint. A leftover. Malik scrolled, and there it was, for levels down, a helper utility with a name that looked harmless, fold laundry. He hovered. That's either cute or, he clicked. The function unfolded like a pocket knife. Inside, a tiny checksum stub called to a seed named Union Ledger. Another comment. This one so faint it looked like someone had almost erased it. // when the cards are checked. Debts are paid, my father's phrase. The Union Hall on a Tuesday night in July. The smell of coffee too old to complain. Card check called. Men standing. Debts paid. My father's ledger. Leather corners. Local 418 printed in thick pencil like a prayer. Debts are paid. Not Elliot, I said, voice thin and certain. He wouldn't know the phrase. He grew up with credit cards, not cards on a table. Then who? Malik asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. Archer, I said, then shook my head. No, he wouldn't be sentimental in comments. He wants to be found, not understood. I scrolled farther into the helper's helper, into a corner no one had to write. A silent string, a UUID that shouldn't have mattered. 418, UAF. UA, Malik said. United Association. Your father. Ev, I said. Could be Elliot Vance. Or, I stared at it until my eyes hurt. Or, Evan. Who's Evan? Malik asked. I didn't answer for a beat. The memory had stepped into the room without asking. My father's old friend at the hall. A younger man by 10 years, with a quiet laugh and an ear for contracts. Evan Vale. He'd been around our kitchen twice when I was a kid, a gentle giant who fixed our sink like it was a sick dog. He'd moved away. He'd died early, my mother had said, of a heart that wasn't allowed to stop. Vale, I said, the word finding a shape in my mouth. Antonia Vale's father. Malik finished frowning. Or uncle, or brother. I pulled up public records in my head because the internet wasn't allowed in the Pelican. Antonia Vale would have scrubbed her genealogy like a counter. But the union's lobby photographs hadn't been scrubbed the day my father had made me shake 20 hands and eat a donut that tasted like a warehouse. Archer said the last trick wasn't his, I said. Maybe he meant the first one wasn't either. Malik leaned back. You're saying what? This started before we had a company? Before Elliot had a key? A debt in a hall with coffee that could strip paint? I didn't answer. The room felt off kilter, history tilting. The backdoor's lint stank of the past. Union Ledger. Card check. For 18, Ev. I closed the file. I put my palms flat on the cheap table. Morning, I said, because sometimes you have to pronounce a time into the room so it becomes true. We give the ADA the key, the letter, the footage, the worm snapshot, the comment with the lint. We don't point. We show. We don't accuse. We preserve. And Elliot, Malik asked. We let him hang himself on his own governance, I said. He'll try the rotation anyway. He'll try a different trustee. He'll try to pivot the narrative. And Quinn, if she wants to keep her name, will prefer a messy truth to a pretty trap. Malik rubbed his face. And Archer, he'll call, I said. He always calls. He did. As the sky went from metal to paper again, the burner vibrated with that tone it had learned from him. I answered. You looked in the lint. Archer said, pleased. Good. Who is Evan? I asked. A question with answers that stain, he said lightly. We'll get there. First, sunrise. Put on a tie. The color isn't important, unless you're nostalgic. I threw yours away, I said. I replaced it already, he said. And I could hear the smile, see the forgettable face brightening like a dull coin. We're going to the DA, I said. Then to Quinn. Excellent, he said. Bring flowers. Why? Because you're going to a funeral, Archer said gently. Not of a man, of a version of a story. They're always the saddest. People never bring enough lilies. The line went white. I looked at Malik. He looked at the brick. The river sounded like it had swallowed and decided to keep it. Let's dress, I said. We have a day to end and a day to begin. He stood, joints complaining the way truth does when it's been bent too long. We killed the VM, packed the drives, sealed the case. Outside, the park had traded ghosts for joggers. A woman ran past with a dog that looked like a small bear and a pace like a decision. Somewhere, bread was being sliced. Somewhere else, a boy was being told to put on a coat. I touched the inner pocket where the key sat and felt, for the first time since the polite knock at 2:14 a.m., something like control that wasn't a trick. We walked towards sunrise like men who had not slept and had decided that was a personality. The city let us pass, uninterested and generous. Behind us, the river pretended it didn't keep secrets. Ahead, the courthouse pretended it did. Between the two, Archer's voice lingered like the echo of a coin spin choosing land. And somewhere uptown, Elliot poured coffee, read his own letter again, and told himself that he was doing what heroes do, writing a world where he gets to carry the heaviest key and never admit it fits his hand too well. We would fix that, or we would try. Sometimes, in a union hall or a boardroom, trying is the only honest card you have to show. The courthouse at dawn feels less like justice and more like plumbing. Pipes clank. Janitors polish brass that will tarnish by noon. Security guards wave you through with eyes that already know how the day ends. Malik and I carried the Pelican case as if it were fragile, though it weighed heavier than most truths. The ADA we'd spoken to yesterday, Reyes, different bloodline than Avery, but with the same look of practiced suspicion, met us at the door. She had coffee in one hand and an evidence bag in the other. Morning, she said, flat as blacktop. Show me why she missed breakfast. We showed her. The key sealed. The worm snapshot, notarized. The video of the handoff on the river path, timestamps aligned like soldiers. The letter in Elliot's perfect voice. And finally, the lint, the backdoor comments, the union phrase, the ghost of debts paid. She listened, eyes flicking fast. When Malik reached the part about fold laundry, she raised one brow. That name alone gets you probable cause. Probable cause for who? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She sipped and, depends who wants to see a villain this week. Could be Elliot if Quinn cuts him loose. Could be Antonia if someone decides she knew more than she said. Could even be you, Mr. Cole, if the press decides this is too tidy. Press already decided I'm guilty, I said. Then this isn't about innocence, she said. It's about survivability. I'll log the key with chain of custody, initiate a freeze on mirror number 3, and prep subpoenas for Fane. That buys you time, not absolution. Malik exhaled. Time is enough. She packed the evidence bag with the kind of reverence undertakers give to a corpse dressed too well. One more thing, she said. Archer called me. I froze. He what? She smirked without humor. Not by name, but someone sent my office an encrypted drop 2 hours ago. Same data you handed me, minus the commentary. The message said, redundancy is safety. Don't trust the narrators. That's his handwriting, Malik muttered. The ADA looked at me. Who is he? A ghost, I said, but one who likes being seen. Quinn's table by mid-morning, Quinn had assembled another boardroom theater. Counsel, external auditors, a PR consultant in a tie that shouted optimism. Elliot sat already at the table, letter open in front of him like a sermon draft. When we entered, silence did a small bow. Mr. Cole, Quinn said, voice not unfriendly. You've had a productive night. Less productive than my brother, I said, tossing the folded letter onto the table. He's been busy writing my obituary. Elliot didn't flinch. It's not an obituary, Dan. It's a bridge. Someone has to write the words people can walk across. And you make sure they walk where you want them to, Malik snapped. Quinn raised a hand. Enough. The ADA has briefed me. Mirror number 3 is sealed. Fane is being compelled to disclose. What remains is narrative. And narrative is expensive. She nodded to the PR man, who clicked a slide onto the wall. Vesper statement. Draft 3 acknowledges unauthorized access event. Announces temporary governance structure with Elliot and Quinn as co-maintainers. Positions Daniel as visionary on leave, assisting investigation. Promises independent audit with findings published. It was neat. Too neat. The kind of neat that shoves dirt under someone else's rug. No, I said, you don't get to bury this under unauthorized access. Say what happened. My credentials were forged, logs injected, replication rerouted. Say it in English. The PR man smiled the way only consultants smile. English frightened shareholders. We speak finance. Try speaking union, I said, louder than I meant. Say debts are paid. Say the ledgers were fixed. Say something real. Elliot's eyes narrowed just slightly at the phrase. Recognition, or guilt, or both. Daniel, Quinn said, cool as slate. You're not the author of this story anymore. Yes, I said, I am. Because if you push your sanitized version, I'll release the river footage myself. With commentary. With names. That landed. PR man paled. Counsel whispered. Malik grinned like a man, watching someone else finally flip the table. Quinn studied me. Long, unblinking. Very well, she said finally. We compromise. We use your language, but framed. Transparent enough to survive scrutiny. Careful enough to calm markets. Deal. I nodded once. Deal. Elliot looked at me then, not angry, not even betrayed. Just tired. You think you've won, Dan? But this is just a funeral. Whose? I asked. He didn't answer. The press by noon, the statement hit wires. Phrases like manipulated credentials, replication fork, and preserved forensic evidence sat in bold on Bloomberg, Reuters, The Times. Elliot's name was in the second paragraph, mine in the first. Antonia Vale appeared on cable, lips bruised apple as ever, insisting Valaris welcomed the audit. She smiled the way surgeons smile when they already know the prognosis. And Archer? He left a single voicemail on the burner. Lilies, Daniel. You forgot lilies. Funerals deserve flowers. I deleted it, but the echo stayed. Back in my apartment, blinds drawn, Malik crashed on the couch with half a sandwich still in hand. Avery texted updates. Subpoenas served, Quinn in meetings, Elliot silent. I sat at the desk, the key in front of me, glinting like a coin between outcomes. On my laptop screen, the Lint code, the phrase debts are paid. My father's ledger in digital echo. The funeral wasn't Elliot's or mine. It was the funeral of the story we used to tell ourselves, that we were building something clean, untouched by the swamp. Now the swamp had a ledger, and it wanted a balance. Absolutely. Let's bring this story home. Below is the conclusion arc in full prose, chapters 6 and 7. Written in the same tone and pace as before, you wrote letters to bury me alive. He didn't rise to it. He just said, I did what was necessary. Before I could answer, the door opened. Archer strolled in as if he'd been invited. No guard stopped him. He had the kind of face that convinced receptionists he belonged. He held a folded newspaper under his arm and a half-smile under his forgettable hair. Good morning, he said cheerfully. Don't mind me. Just here to deliver the obituary. Quinn stiffened. Who the hell? Don't bother. I cut her off. He's already in your system. Archer dropped the paper on the table. Headline: Vesper Dynamics rocked by trust scandal. Subheadline: Founder cleared? Brother implicated? Fast, isn't it? Archer said. The story's already sprinting. Now you must decide whether it runs off a cliff or across a bridge. Quinn's eyes burned holes through me. Do you know this man? No one knows him, I said. Archer grinned. And yet here I am, shaping your morning. He leaned against the whiteboard, unconcerned. Here's your choice, Daniel. Bury Elliot completely. Feed the story. Make him the villain. Let the company rise from his ashes. or keep him breathing, wounded but alive, so the market believes Vesperin still has stability. Translation, Malik said, turn him into a scapegoat or a scarecrow. Exactly, Archer said. Both work, but you can't have both. Elliot finally spoke, low and deliberate. Dan, don't do this. You know I can keep the house standing. I looked at him. For a moment, I saw us on that radiator years ago, eating noodles, dreaming about engines and futures. But then I saw the forged logs, the back doors, the trusts waiting like traps. You kept the house standing, I said, by selling the floorboards. Archer clapped softly. Poetic. Now, time's running. What will it be? Thorne handed them 2 seal drives and a clipboard. Witness lines. Daniel signed with a hand that had stopped trembling. Avery signed, jaw tight. Malik signed with a flourish like a signature, was a joke only he got. As they turned to go, Thorne cleared his throat. Mr. Cole. Daniel looked back. Men like me do not admire men like you, Thorne said. We tolerate you. Today, I admired you. Briefly. I'll try not to make it a habit, Daniel said. On the sidewalk, the sky had chosen a color resembling brass. The city was a throat clearing. Malik tilted his face to the light. We should go straight to the DA. We will, Daniel said, after we stop by the office. Avery's head whipped. Why? Because Elliot's about to get an offer from Quinn he can't resist, Daniel said. And I need to be in a room to make sure the offer is a staircase, not a trapdoor. They hailed another cab. The sealed drive sat in Daniel's lap like quiet animals. At Vesperin, the lobby guard didn't meet his eyes but didn't stop him either. On 28, the boardroom buzzed like wires in summer. Quinn stood, counsel beside her, a new draft on the table. Longer, thicker, more expensive. Elliot faced the window, hands on his hips the way he did before he made a speech he wanted to land. He turned as they entered. His expression did a complicated thing. You got something, he said. I got enough, Daniel said. He held up the seal drives. Which version of you do you want to be, Eli? Elliot glanced at Quinn, at the papers, at Daniel. The version that keeps the house standing, he said. Then you're going to help me tear down the rooms built on lies, Daniel replied, starting with Silent Spring and Glass House. Elliot's pupils tightened. You've been busy. Sign this, Quinn said, sliding the new draft toward Daniel. Agreement for joint preservation and cooperation. Leave of absence with pay. Mutual non-disparagement pauses for 72 hours. 3 named entities we will disclose to authorities within 24. Daniel scanned. The entities named matched the ones that made his stomach pitch. Someone, Avery or Malik or Quinn's clerk with a dangerous notion of service, had fed the list fast. Elliot watched him. You sign. This becomes our story, he said softly. You don't. It becomes theirs. Daniel took a pen. He remembered Archer in the garage, the tie switch, the laughter. He remembered his father's ledger and the smack on his hand, and the lesson that asking first is how you learn what you're about to take. He signed. Quinn countersigned, neat as a weapon. Now, Daniel said, capping the pen like he was closing a hatch. We call the DA. Counsel was already dialing. Malik sank into a chair with the relief of a man who had thrown a chair through a wall and been thanked for it. Avery let herself smile for the first time in 2 days, and it made Daniel want to make her smile for a year. Elliot stepped close, not touching. You think this saves us, he murmured. No, Daniel said. I think it buys us a fair fight. Elliot looked at the seal drives. And Archer, he'll get bored, Daniel said, or he'll get hung on his own frame. You don't believe that, Eli said. No, Daniel admitted, but I plan to make him hate being in my story. Down the hall, the elevator dinged. Footsteps fast, then a woman's voice announcing herself in the tone of someone who enters rooms like subpoenas. The ADA. Good. The card check was moving to a new table. Daniel turned to the window. The city below was a mess that worked. Vindication wasn't a verdict. It was this, a room of wolves forced to file paperwork while the lambs sharpened their teeth. His phone, his new, honest burner, vibrated. A text from an unknown number, but he knew the tone. Breadcrumbs 6, tonight. 1 a.m., East River Park. Bring no phone. Bring Malik. Leave Elliot. P.S. The last trick isn't mine. It's his. He pocketed the phone. eyes on Eli's reflection in the glass. A man who could save a company or sell it a prettier kind of ruin. Tonight, Daniel said under his breath, to the city, to the ledger in his blood. AM is a different country. The city's roar thins to a long metallic hush. The lamps go jaundiced. The river carries secrets like a smuggler. Malik shuffled beside me, the aftertaste of adrenaline still in his voice. No phones, he muttered. No radios. If I die because we honored theater, I'm haunting your HVAC. You already do, I said. Every time a vent rattles, I hear you correcting my variable names. He snorted, then sobered. You think Archer's alone? No, I said, but I think he wants us to see who isn't. We moved under the FDR like men who belonged to the night. The park benches had the posture of waiting. The river was slate. Far upriver, a tug leaned into a low horn like a warning it had paid for years ago and was using out of habit. Archer stepped out from the shadow of a caged-off handball court. No mask this time. Still the average face, the forgettable hair. He wore a gray windbreaker that could have been issued by any corporation that wanted its employees dry and anonymous. Mr. Cole, Mr. Amon. He sounded cheerful, like a host welcoming reluctant guests to a show that would start with or without them. In his left hand, a slim pelican case. In his right, nothing, which was how you knew he had considered making the right hand dangerous and decided not to. You said the last trick isn't yours, I said. That it's his. He lifted the case. We'll get there. First, tools. He clicked it open with the satisfaction of a man who likes compartments. Inside, two small handhelds that looked like calculators but hummed like snakes, a couple of USB-C sticks with tamper stickers, a pack of nitrile gloves, and something that could best be described as a polite brick with an Ethernet port. Malik's eyes warmed like a man seeing old friends. Packet logger. Passive mirror tap. YubiKey clones with cold epoxy heads. He looked at Archer, impressed against his will. Who are you when you're not performing crimes? Verbose, Archer said, and occasionally useful. Listen carefully, because this part happens on schedule. At 1:20, a courier meets a courier on the River Walk, South End. They do what couriers do, exchange nothing, which is to say everything. One carries a hardware token, a physical maintainer key for the override we use today. The other carries a paper letter that becomes a story in the morning. Your friend Elliot engineered both paths. Why a physical token? I asked. Because someone taught him, Archer said. Someone like me, or someone trying to be me. He handed me one of the UB clones. It was cool, heavier than it looked, with a head potted in epoxy, so it couldn't be popped open without telling on itself. His last trick, Archer went on, is tidy. Before dawn, he rotates the system maintainer keys and locks down the partner registry. He claims it's part of a new era of governance after the regrettable incident. The only living maintainer key sits with a neutral third-party trustee. Fane, protected by a second factor that only Elliot can provide. The DA walks in, find a fortress, not a crime scene. Your chairwoman finds a hero who saved the house by sacrificing control. Control that only he can unsacrifice, Malik said, bitter and impressed. Correct, Archer said. He becomes indispensable, a martyr with root. What about the letter? I asked. Archer's mouth made a thin line. It's a narrative, a confessional that confesses nothing. He'll sign it if he has to, admits process lapses under extraordinary pressure, apologizes for approving partner tokens too quickly, praises your vision, weeps for the public, and insists the company must move past personalities. The headline kisses him and buries you. He thinks he can freeze the crime scene and format the disc at the same time, Malik said. Guy always loved juggling knives. I felt a familiar ache, old friendship rubbing against fresh bone. So why tell us? Because there's a key, Archer said simply, tapping the case with a knuckle. A literal one, arriving in 6 minutes. If you intercept it quietly, you can stop the rotation. If you let it pass, tomorrow you're negotiating through bulletproof glass. And you? I asked. Where do you stand when the dance starts? Archer looked past me at the river, at the strip of black where city met water like an incision. I told you already. I like complicated. Clean endings bore me. I do not want him crowned. I do not want you crucified. I want a stage with more acts. He slid the polite brick toward Malik. Tap the public node on the park's maintenance camera. Don't transmit. Just record. The handoff needs witnesses. Malik crouched under a lamp whose light had given up on warmth. He popped a panel like a man keying open his own mailbox, clipped the tap in line, and watched as the little LEDs began to blink, counting the breaths of a network that thought it was asleep. This gets us a watchable, he said, satisfied. If we have to show a DA who bumped whose hand with what envelope at the exact second a key flagged into an escrow ledger, we can. Archer checked a watch that might have been expensive and might have been a toy. 2 minutes. We shifted south. The path narrowed where a stand of trees hid the river's edge from the road. A bench sat with its back to the water, like someone confident the river wouldn't try anything. A rat the size of a rumor darted and reconsidered. Rules, Archer said softly. No violence. You intercept with conversation, not force. Daniel, you hold the key because the story is cleaner if I don't touch it. Malik, you run the logger and keep the time. If our couriers get jumpy, he looked at me. Say something only a founder would say. What if Elliot shows? I asked. Archer's smile arrived, faint and untrustworthy. He will. At 1:20 exactly, because corporate conspiracies and civic services share punctuality, a man in a pea coat and a watch cap came north, hands tucked, posture customized to be unmemorable. From the south, a woman in a long black puffer approached, hood up, scarf high. They slowed near the bench, bodies angling, so their faces never quite went full profile to any camera. Now, Archer breathed. We stepped out like we belonged to the same hour as them. The peacoat glanced, dismissed, resumed. The puffer held up a white folded page with the precise theatricality of a person mailing a letter into a slot. The peacoat held up nothing, then lowered his hand, having left nothing behind. Evening, I said, friendly, not too loud. Elliot sends an apology. They both froze in that microsecond where a plan checks itself. The puffer's gloved hands lowered a hair. The peacoat pivoted an inch toward me, as if to prove he didn't know the name I'd said. He also sends a substitution, I added, showing my empty palms. Only I can make it. Peacoat took a breath, the kind people take when they've been asked to improvise at work. I don't know an Elliot, he said mildly. His eyes flicked to my shoes, to Malik's hands, to Archer's face, and dismissed us as 3 different kinds of civilian. Then you don't know you're about to cause a felony, Malik said, conversational as weather. Which is good news, because intent is a hungry beast. My friend will take your little hardware toy, pass you a receipt, and we'll go home. He lifted the logger's display, just enough for the man to see a ladder of legalese and numbers that looked like the inside of a compliance officer's dreams. Chain of custody, baby. The puffer's voice, when it came, was younger than I expected. We're just paper, she said, and lifted the folded letter slightly. We don't carry toys. Tonight you do, Archer said, and the way he said it had the weight of someone who had written the route. He nodded at Peacoat's left jacket pocket. Inside lining. 5th stitch cut and resewn. I admire the work. The man's face tightened, not with fear, but with the resignation of a professional being seen. He gave a small nod, to whom, I couldn't tell, and reached. His gloved fingers came out with a small black fob with a brass ring and a flat contact, the epoxy head dull as a threat sealed shut. What's the receipt? He asked me, because I had claimed the role and theater loves continuity. This, I said, and held out my hand, gloveless, open. He didn't smile. He placed the fob in my palm, holding it there a beat longer than necessary. A pressure, a message, something like, this is a job, not a marriage. The puffer extended the folded letter. Archer didn't move. Malik didn't either. I took the paper, feeling the weight of a narrative so carefully calibrated to feel light. Thank you, I said. You're free. They didn't look convinced. But they left because pros obey schedules. We watched them disappear into lamplight, turn into 2 slices of shadow, and then into no one. Archer exhaled the way you exhale after defusing a device that never claimed to be a bomb. Good. Now put the key in your pocket and don't gloat. Pride sprains ankles. I slid it into my inner jacket pocket where the notepad had carved a place for talismans. Open the letter, Malik said. I unfolded the paper. He'd been right. It smelled faintly of cedar. Elliot's voice marched across it in sentences that had been scrubbed, polished, and focus grouped in his own head. To our employees, partners, and community. Apology procedural. We fell short of our values. Passive voice. I approve processes I should have questioned. Chest burden without bruise. Daniel's contributions are singular. The company must transcend any one individual. Praise like a eulogy. We'll restore trust with transparent governance. Key rotation dressed as virtue. No comment on ongoing investigations. The silk of plausible kindness covering the iron of control. He makes a very pretty gallows, Malik said. He does, Archer agreed. He watched me watch the words. Now comes the part you won't like. I'm already not enjoying the appetizer, I said. He cocked his head toward the dark beyond the lamps. Smile. He's behind you. I didn't turn fast because prey turns fast. I turned like a man hearing his name in a cafe. Elliot stood 10 yards back on the path, hands in the pockets of a coat that wanted to be more expensive than it was. His face looked like mine felt, tired, alert, stubborn. Dan, he said, and even now, even after the day, the syllable landed on me like a friendly hand. He saw the letter in my hand, the weight in my pocket, the lump of Archer trying to be moonlight. I'm here to stop you from making a mistake, Elliot said. Which one? Malik asked. The one you typed or the one you signed? Elliot's eyes flicked over him and back to me. The mistake where you think taking one key stops a system. The mistake where you think hurting me helps the company. You set up a lock that only you can open, I said. You wrote a story where you're necessary. I wrote a plan where a mob can't eat us, he said quietly. I'm not the villain of your bedtime story, Dan. I'm the guy standing in the doorframe, holding back the storm with my shoulder. He took a step closer. Archer didn't move. Malik's shoulders squared. Give me the key, Elliot said, calm and earnest, like we were swapping gear before a pitch meeting. No, I said. His eyebrows nudged up in that disappointed way that had gotten us free routers when we were 25. You think you can keep it from me? I don't have to, I said. Just long enough to stop the rotation and force a proper audit. You'll destroy confidence, he said, and for the first time tonight, I heard fear, real as bone. We will bleed. Quinn will lose the middle. Antonio will feed the press. Archer will. He stopped himself, looked at Archer, disgust edging his mouth. You'll get exactly what you want. What I want, Archer said pleasantly, is for the truth to have oxygen. Your rotation is a velvet suffocation. Elliot's jaw ticked. He looked back at me. You don't know him like I do. Neither do you, I said. That's the point of men like him. They're mirrors that tilt. He shook his head once, then softened his voice the way you talk to skittish horses and stubborn friends. Dan, we can do this without blowing up the house. We install the rotation. We use the trustee. We let the DA play hero while we keep the lights on. In 2 months, you and I are doing a joint interview about resilience. And in 2 months, Malik said, your change of control clauses vest, your trusts pay, and you become the benevolent governor with a private treasury. Elliot didn't blink. Yes, he said, so flat it earned my respect. Because I did the work to make that possible. Because someone had to choreograph. Because you, my friend, build engines and I build rooms for engines to be admired in. Rooms on stilts in a swamp, I said. He smiled sadly. We argued about the swamp when we were 20. We're 41. The swamp isn't going away. We stood, 3 men who had built something together and were now arguing over where to put the fire extinguisher while the house smoked. Archer watched us with the clinical admiration of a surgeon assessing 2 patients who might both survive if a piano fell gently. I won't fight you, Elliot said. And I believed him in that limited, specific way you can believe a man who loves you and has learned to hurt you strategically. But if you keep the key, they'll say you stole it, and you'll be right back in handcuffs. I didn't keep it, I said. I preserved it. The word landed. He recognized Malik's cadence in it. He recognized the law's favorite fiction turned into a blade. We can fight tomorrow, I said, in rooms with witnesses. Tonight, I stop you from locking us out of our own house. He studied my face as if there were a lever behind the skin he could pull. Then he sighed and did a thing I wasn't ready for. He stepped closer and lowered his voice, so only I would hear. They will come for you harder than today, he said. Quinn can protect you from markets. She can't protect you from narrative. Antonia will feed your worst chapter to the press at breakfast. Archer will make it art by lunch. Then we'll make it a documentary by dinner, I said. He laughed. And it was old, it was ours, it was cruel. You better learn to like cameras. He stepped back, palms open, look, no tricks, and turned away. He walked north, shoulders set, not running, not defeated, just committed to a version of the story where he gets to keep the pen. The board convened that evening. Cameras lined the back wall. Auditors, lawyers, and employees filled every seat. For once, the fruit plate sat untouched. I stood at the head of the table, the ADA beside me, Malik and Avery flanking like anchors. Elliot sat opposite, hands folded, expression carved from porcelain. This is the card check, I began. My father used to say that phrase when the union settled accounts. Names were called, debts recorded, lies burned away. Tonight, Vesper has its own card check. I laid the evidence on the table. The worm snapshot showing forged logs under my name. The river footage, time-stamped handoff of the maintainer key. The letter Elliot wrote, rehearsed guilt wrapped in virtue. And the contract from Fane, Silent Spring, Glasshouse, Caraway, each bearing Elliot's signature and Antonia Vale's witness mark. Gasps rippled across the room. Counsel whispered furiously. Quinn's face was unreadable stone. Elliot finally spoke. Yes, I signed them. Yes, I approved tokens. But I did it to protect Vesperin. Without me, the system collapses. I held up the key. You try to make yourself indispensable. But indispensability is just another prison. You don't get to be warden and inmate. The ADA stepped forward. Evidence has been preserved. Charges are being considered. This board should prepare for full cooperation. Murmurs rose. Panic maybe, but also relief. Relief that someone else was finally saying it out loud. I looked at Quinn. You can cut him loose, or you can let him stay, not as a hero, not as a martyr, but as a liability bound to the truth. His name is already tainted. Keep him, and the company stands on shaky legs. Let him go, and the company learns to walk without him. Quinn's eyes flicked between us. Then she spoke. Elliot Vance will take an indefinite leave of absence. Pending investigation. Effective immediately. It wasn't a prison sentence. Not yet, but it was a verdict. Elliot's face cracked, just slightly. He looked at me. Not with rage, but with something worse, sorrow. You think you've won, he whispered. No, I said. I think the truth has. Archer's words echoed in my head. Funerals deserve flowers. This was one. The funeral of the story where Elliot was untouchable. I closed the session with my father's phrase. When the cards are checked, debts are paid. And for the first time in months, I felt the ledger balance. The headlines the next morning read, Co-founder cleared as audit expands. Trust scandal widens. Subscribers to my story doubled. Investors wavered, then steadied. Elliot disappeared from public view. Antonia Vale issued denials wrapped in velvet. Archer left no trace but a voicemail. Nicely done, Daniel. The story isn't over. It never is. He was right. But for now, vindication was enough. Because sometimes, justice isn't a gavel. It's surviving the narrative, standing when others wanted you buried, and making sure the truth is louder than the lie. And when the cards were checked, my debt, finally, was paid. Vindication doesn't always come in a courtroom. Sometimes it comes in a boardroom full of wolves, where evidence is heavier than words. Sometimes it comes when a forged letter is torn apart, or when a key meant to lock you out becomes the very thing that opens the truth. Daniel Cole didn't win because he destroyed his brother. He won because he survived the story they tried to bury him in. And survival is its own kind of justice. The lesson? No lie lasts forever. No trap stays hidden. And when the cards are checked, debts are paid. If you stayed with me through this story, don't forget to subscribe. More tales of betrayal, revenge, and hard-won triumph are waiting. Stories that prove truth always finds its voice.